Welcome to our video on do full-time students pay income tax or tax-exempt? In Canada, with take time around the corner, we thought you may find this information useful. Here are the topics we will be covering in this video. Full-time student status. When determining if a full-time student is tax-exempt, it's important to consider who qualifies as such. Multiple entities can determine if someone is a full-time student. In some cases, the university or college will have qualifications, such as the amount of courses or other requirements related to school. The Canada Revenue Agency (CRA) defines a full-time student as someone who regularly attends a university, college, or another educational institution at the post-secondary level. In this case, full-time attendance applies to students studying from September to April. Other cases that qualify someone as a full-time student occur when a student enrolls in a qualifying educational program. If the student didn't have a full course load, they could still qualify if they attended part-time and were eligible for the Disability Tax Credit (DTC). A student may also qualify as full-time if they attended part-time due to a mental or physical impairment. For these students to count as full-time, they must have a letter from their doctor certifying the condition. What is a qualifying educational program? Another part of determining a student's status is if they enroll in a qualifying educational program. Such programs must last at least 3 weeks with no weeks off during the term. Each week, the student should have at least 10 hours of work or instruction, excluding study time. The program can occur at any educational institution, but the institution must meet certain requirements. First, it can be a college or university in Canada, or it can be another educational institution in the country. If the college or university is outside of the country, the program must also be at least 3 weeks. However, it should also lead to a bachelor's degree or higher. Certain institutions in the United States can also qualify if they give post-secondary courses. This applies to schools near the Canadian border where the student in question lives in Canada and commutes across the border to go to school. What about online studies? As technology becomes more common, many students may opt to earn a degree online. If a student wants to take online courses, the CRA only considers that student full-time if the program requires virtual attendance on a full-time basis. The requirement can apply to classes and course-related activities, but online studies can be optional. If a student takes online courses from a college outside of Canada, they won't be a full-time student if they only take courses by correspondence or electronic assignment submissions. When full-time students pay income tax. Now that you understand if you qualify as a full-time student, you should consider if you will need to pay income taxes. The student tax rate isn't any different from the regular tax rate. Those students do typically have a lower income. You will need to pay income tax anytime you work or receive any other income while you're in school. It doesn't matter if you're a full-time or part-time student. And it doesn't matter if you earned a ton of money or not. Filing your taxes lets you claim a refund, and you can use your taxes to declare how much you spent on tuition during the year. Consider a few situations where you have to pay income tax as a full-time student. Working part-time. If you work part-time during the school year, you will need to pay income tax on those earnings, and the amount can depend on how much you earn. Many students need or choose to work part-time to help pay for tuition and living expenses. Working summers. You may also need to pay income tax if you work during the summers and other school breaks. The same rules apply to students who work part-time throughout the year. When you work for a Canadian employer, they have to take money from your paycheck to account for the Canadian pension plan and other benefits. Now you will be able to enjoy these benefits later, but you have to pay your share when you work as a full-time student. Working for yourself. Some full-time students may opt to work for themselves rather than to get a normal job. If you provide services such as babysitting or tutoring, then usually means you work for yourself. You will need to pay your student income taxes, and you won't have an employer to deduct them for you. That means you will need to track your income throughout the year. Then you can pay the CRA your tax balance when you file. Even if you also work for an employer, you will need to manage any self-employed income. Being a full-time student won't exempt you from having to pay income taxes. Getting scholarships and bursaries. If you get more than $500 in scholarships or bursaries, you will need to pay income tax on the amount over $500. After that threshold, you will need to report your income from scholarships on your tax return. You can only receive this exemption if the scholarship is for your enrollment in a qualifying program. The scholarship also has to be for the duration of the program. However, students in Quebec will need to report all of their income from scholarships and bursaries. Fellowship income. If you pursue a postdoctoral fellowship in Canada, that income will be taxable. You also can't receive the scholarship exemption because that only applies to programs that lead to a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree. When full-time students don't pay income tax, you may think that the answer is always no to the question, is a full-time student tax-exempt? However, there is one case where a full-time student doesn't have to pay income tax. If a full-time student doesn't work and doesn't receive a scholarship, bursary, or fellowship, they won't have to pay income tax. This situation isn't the most common as many students work or have some financial assistance to pay for school. But it can still occur if a student has help from parents or other family members and doesn't need to work during school. What about international students? If you're an international student in Canada, you have a lot of costs to think about. And if you work during your studies, you do still have to pay income tax like Canadian residents. When you establish residential ties with Canada and live there for more than half of the year, you will be a resident for tax purposes. You don't have to be an official resident for immigration purposes. Attending college full-time in Canada does count as establishing residential ties. Once you arrive in Canada to study, you will need to pay international student income taxes as if you were from the country. Now you will also have to pay taxes on any income you earn back home. Unfortunately, Canadian income tax applies worldwide.